Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into something that's quietly but really dramatically shaping the future of digital interactions for, well, hundreds of millions of people. We're talking about the EU Digital Identity Wallet. Now, this isn't just another app for your phone. It's a huge step, a monumental one, in how we all, individuals, organizations, prove who we are online. And it's set to impact over 450 million people across the EU, plus Norway and Iceland.
That scale is really something.
It really is. So our mission today, we want to peel back the layers on this, because while this EU Digital Identity Wallet, the EU DIW, promises loads of convenience, maybe better security, it also brings in some really complex new challenges, especially when we start talking about agents, these autonomous software things. So we're going to unpack this critical area people are calling agentic risk mitigation. Basically trying to figure out who's responsible, who's on the hook when things happen.
Right, where does the buck
Exactly. We'll explore what this means for you, whether you're just curious about where digital identity is heading, or maybe you're already thinking about a world where your digital self is interacting with these autonomous digital agents.
And what's really interesting, I think, is that this EUDIW isn't just some vague idea. It's the direct result of the IATS regulations.
Yes, IATS.
Exactly. Which have been evolving, to keep up with the digital changes. There are recent updates, new implementing acts that really spell out the framework for this wallet. So this isn't a suggestion, it's law. Across all 27 EU member states, plus Norway and Iceland, it's creating this harmonized digital ID system for, well, a massive population.
And the timeline is, well, it's pretty aggressive, isn't it? There are some serious deadlines here.
Very concrete.
So every citizen has to be offered at least one EU DIW before the end of 2026.
That's right.
And then, by the end of 2027, all regulated bodies must accept it, alongside the old ways, traditional credentials. But they have to accept the wallet. That feels like a really fast rollout for something so fundamental.
It is fast. And, while it might sound fairly straightforward for, say, natural persons, and, you or me, needing to prove our age online or something.
Right, simple use cases.
The sources also really emphasize that the EUDIW applies to legal persons, too. Businesses, organizations.
Well.
And that immediately hints at, well, a whole different level of complexity. It goes way beyond just individuals proving who they are. You're bringing in commercial operations, government interactions, a whole different set of challenges.
Okay, that complexity leads us right to a key point, doesn't it? About how businesses actually work. You've got this big regulation, IDIT sounds all-encompassing, but is it actually enough for businesses, especially given how competitive things are, how specific their operations can be?
That's a really vital question to ask, because if you think about it, regulation alone, it might not be, well, entirely suitable or sufficient for businesses. Regulations give you that legal foundation, the baseline.
Okay.
But businesses, they operate with very specific terms and conditions, their T&Cs, and these are absolutely critical for how they run day to day. Think about it: performance expectations, product limits, payment terms, refunds, and crucially, specific liabilities.
So all the fine print.
Exactly. And these things are often super specific to a sector or even just one business. Broad regulations just can't cover that level of detail. I mean, the T&Cs for booking a flight are worlds apart from, say, licensing software.
That's a great way to put it. So the regulation sets the main road rules, but businesses need their own local traffic laws for their specific streets.
Precisely.
And these commercial T&Cs, they act as a kind of top-up, filling the gaps the regulations leave. And the sources mentioned we need to think about differences between online and traditional channels, too. An online purchase might have different rules than buying in a shop.
You've nailed it. And the underlying principle here, which the sources stress, is being evolutionary, not revolutionary. Just because something's digital now, we shouldn't just, throw out common sense or existing best practices.
Right. Don't reinvent the wheel unnecessarily.
Exactly. Mitigating commercial risk. That has to remain absolutely paramount, even in this new digital setup. We can't just discard decades of legal and commercial understanding because the medium changed.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, I think. When we bring in these agents, these autonomous software bits into the equation, suddenly figuring out responsibility, it gets much, much trickier. This is that agentic risk mitigation idea. And apparently the wallet itself can work with these agents in two pretty different ways.
That's right. Let's look at the first one. It's described as the closed wallet workflow. You can sort of picture the wallet as just a dumb container here.
A dumb container.
Yeah, basically just holding credentials within a very structured, pre-agreed process. It's linear, predictable. The sources say the workflow operator, the one running the show, makes sure everything follows the high-level rules.
Okay.
And the agents involved, they're essentially just tools of the owner, designed to work predictably within set limits. The owner, the person or company initiating the action, they have to take responsibility for all the outcomes, even if they've hired someone else to run the agent for them.
So in this closed model, the responsibility trail seems, well, reasonably clear. Like each agent does its job, hands over responsibility to the next one in line.
Pretty much. It's a clear chain.
A single responsible entity at each step. And that sounds like it keeps the regulatory stuff separate from the commercial stuff quite neatly, because everyone knows their role in this defined flow.
Precisely. That closed domain offers a lot of clarity.
Oh.
But now, contrast that with the other model, the open agentic wallet workflow.
Yep.
Here, the wallet isn't just a container. It's acting more like a carrier, maybe even the driver, of a process that's unstructured, maybe even, as the source calls it, feral.
Feral, like wild.
Yeah, operating within what's described as an ecosystem playground. And this is where that simple handoff of responsibility just gets incredibly blurry.
Wow. Okay, feral playground. That paints a picture. Why does it get so chaotic? What sort of dilemmas does this unstructured setup create?
Well, imagine this playground. You could have lots of independent agents interacting, making decisions, maybe even creating value in ways that weren't explicitly programmed or maybe weren't even anticipated.
Wait, emergent behavior.
Exactly. And that just throws up so many difficult questions, like, does each agent still hand over responsibility neatly to the next one? Or does it keep some liability? What about the ultimate beneficiary, the person or company who gets the final value? Do they bear all the liability? Or just some?
Or maybe the beneficiary of each agent's action along the way.
That's another possibility. And how do you even measure value and therefore loss between agents when the process is so complex and adaptive? It's really challenging. Plus, you need a clear way to figure out and declare the risks involved in each step so agents can factor that risk into their own decision-making.
Okay, so the agents need risk awareness too.
Yes. And what if an agent has its own financial beneficiary, separate from the main user? The sources even warn about anonymous malicious agents popping up in this kind of environment. How do you track down who caused harm when the actors are just, digital code?
That sounds like a nightmare to police.
It could be. To even attempt to manage this ecosystem playground, you need really clear rules of the game for the environment itself. Things like who owns the ecosystem, who owns the agents, what are the liability frameworks, how do they interoperate, what are the ethical lines and activity limits. It's a huge governance challenge.
It really is a lot to wrap your head around. So we've talked about how these agents might operate, but that brings up something maybe even more fundamental. If we're going to rely on them for complex tasks, for decisions, who are they, in the eyes of the system, in the eyes of the law? What actually defines their identity?
That's really the million-dollar question, isn't it, for the whole future of this stuff? The source material pushes us hard on this. What does ownership of a digital agent even mean? Is it like owning a car? Or more like licensing software?
Good question.
When we talk identity for agents, it forces these really basic questions. How does an agent get a unique ID? Who assigns it? And what is the agent really? Is it the web server it runs on, the cloud provider hosting it, or the actual content and actions it produces? It's not just technical. We need legal frameworks, trust frameworks, specifically for these agentic systems.
So let's say I have a personal finance agent. I set it up to manage my budget. But oops, it misunderstands something and orders like 1,000 pounds of bananas delivered to my house. Who's responsible for that mess? Is it me for setting it up badly? The company that made the agent? Or is the agent somehow at fault?
That's a perfect, slightly absurd, but very real kind of dilemma we could face. It really highlights this critical point about human authorization and delegation. When you set up that agent, what did you actually authorize? Did you delegate authority to the agent itself, letting it run autonomously within certain rules?
Maybe.
Or did you delegate authority just to the running software hosted somewhere? Or maybe you delegated it to the agent provider, the company that built the agent. Those are three very different places where responsibility and liability could potentially land.
I see. Yeah, that's complicated.
We absolutely need to define the legal ownership of an agent by a human or entity and clarify the liabilities of the agent provider, like who's responsible for the data the agent uses, or the machine learning training, the fine-tuning that shapes how it thinks. And think about agent-driven decision-making. When the agent makes a call on its own, well, the quality of that decision is only ever going to be as good as the data it had and the algorithm it was trained with.
Garbage in, garbage out, essentially.
Pretty much, which underlines why we need clear limits on the provider's liability defining what they are and aren't responsible for. And crucially, we need safety valves. Ways for these systems to basically say, you know what, I'm not sure, it's okay not to decide this, rather than making a potentially bad or irreversible choice. That's vital for building trust.
Building on that trust idea, thinking about a future where an agent makes a big decision for you, maybe buys stocks, agrees to a contract, who actually takes the blame if it goes wrong?
Yeah.
How do we even start to draw those lines of accountability when you've got the user, the agent, the provider, the data, the algorithm? It's such a complex web.
It really is.
So if we try to tie these threads together, the sources seem to keep coming back to one main point. The key thing is figuring out if each risk falls into the regulatory domain or the commercial domain. That distinction feels absolutely critical here.
It truly is the linchpin. The regulatory domain, by its nature, it gives us a formal set of liability rules. But, as the sources point out, it can be a bit, vague sometimes when it comes to pinning down exact levels of liability for every possible situation.
Right. It provides the guardrails, but maybe not the specific street signs.
Exactly. And that's where the commercial domain has to step up. Liability there. It must be spelled out clearly in contracts between the parties involved. It acts as that essential top-up, filling in the details where the broader regulations are silent or ambiguous. And importantly, the type of workflow that closed, structured one versus the open, adaptive one, massively impacts this. As we said, the closed domain makes it relatively easy to see what's regulatory and what's commercial. The lines are clearer.
Because it's all predefined.
Right, but the open domain, that feral playground, it can make it incredibly difficult to even identify who all the parties are, let alone pin down responsibilities. Liability in that scenario.
Yeah.
It might end up being really obscure or just incredibly hard to prove. That's where the biggest challenges and maybe the most interesting innovations are going to happen.
Wow. What a journey we've taken just now. Okay, so we've seen the EU digital identity wallet isn't just some future concept. It's coming and fast. It's set to completely redefine digital identity for millions. But alongside that convenience comes this whole new world of automation and this fascinating, maybe slightly scary realm of agentic risks. And that contrast you drew between the predictable closed workflows and the wild, unpredictable open or feral ones, that really throws the challenges of responsibility and liability into sharp focus.
It really does. And as these digital agents get smarter, more sophisticated, and our own identity becomes more, fluid in these digital spaces, the big question shifts. It's not just what can these systems do anymore.
Right.
It becomes what should they do? And crucially, who is truly accountable when those lines inevitably blur? Building the tech is one thing. Building the trust, the governance, the legal frameworks around it, that's the next massive hurdle. So thinking about all this, what stands out to you as the biggest challenge we need to tackle in this landscape?